and what are key points that you focus on to ensure a smooth prep and good results?
Thank you very much, Susan, and I'd just like to thank, I really love coming down here, it's terrific, and thank you very much for inviting me. Well, the key about the preparation, so if you're selected for an international competition, you don't actually have much time, because the selection will be in March and the competition will be in the middle of the year, and you can't, and it's very different to what it would be done in a normal season. Normally you compete in the championship, and then you have a bit of a rest and you start training, but you have almost no time. So you've really got to start training the day in which you come back and plan every aspect of what's going on. Now actually, I thought we'd just quickly, this is a presentation that I've given previously, usually to our junior teams before we go overseas. We usually have a pre-departure camp, so I'm just going to quickly get about to click through things, so expect the unexpected. Now, when you go overseas to international competition, it doesn't always work out like it is here. This is in India at the Commonwealth Youth Games, and that was the warm-up track. Keep going, keep flicking, and this is this area there. So it doesn't always work the way it is. Bushfires, we know about bushfires in this country, but it was there. That was in South America, in Cali. We had armed guards with us all the time with bulletproof vests, and you weren't allowed out of the hotel. That's just showing where we were in Cali. It's one of the highest murder rates in the world. You had to stay inside this hotel. You weren't allowed outside, but you had guards with you all the time because it's very dangerous. I'll keep going. There's some other pictures there. Yeah, warm up. Dealing with poles is a never-ending problem, but the way in which I say it's part of the event. Okay, you've got to, if you can deal with poles better than your competitors, you've got an advantage. And so we have to practice and work out what we're doing. Doing deals with taxi drivers to put the poles on the roof. There's Kaz locked out in the training area, and we had to wait and wait and wait. This is the sort of thing in international competition, queuing up millions of people. Portaloos are everywhere. They're much better in the mornings, afternoons. And this is sort of the warm-up area in the thing, and it's usually crowded and all that sort of thing. Keep going.
As it with the portaloos, you had something there, pack a roll of toilet paper, because you go to there's nothing worse than you go to Portaloo and there's nothing there.
Yeah, yeah. There's all sorts of
have
things.
Have one in your backpack.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, keep going, that's mine. Yeah, keep going. Yeah, don't ever lose your accreditation. You've got big problems there. This is travelling on a team. It's not dissimilar to going to the all schools and this sort of thing, but it's downtime. You're living with other people you don't normally live with, all this sort of thing, and you're expected to compete at a high level. Okay, and so there's team bonding with people from other countries. But yeah, downtime is hugely difficult for you in international competition, which you need to plan for. Have things you can watch, videos and all that sort of stuff. Okay, food is a massive thing. Usually getting the right food is a problem, and not eating too much. Usually on teams we weigh everybody every morning and test their, so you keep track of things. Anyway, I think I suppose I didn't directly answer the question, but I was talking more about when you get overseas. But yeah, that's the issue of dealing with things. It's not necessarily everything's perfect. Okay, things are much better in this country than in most of the places I've ever been to. I've been to a lot of places. Anyway.
Thanks, Mark.
No worries.
Sam, you competed in the World Cross Country Champs last year and produced the best result by an under-20 Australian athlete in 10 years. Amazing, Sam. What did you focus on as part of your training, both physical, organisation-wise, and psychological, in the few months in the lead-in to ensure you were the best on the day?
Yeah, look, thank you for the opportunity for me to speak this morning. Greatly appreciate it. Physically, actually no, I'll go to the organisation side. With World Cross Country, with Mark saying you don't have much time, especially even with the cross country one, for the trials and then the actual competition itself. It was like 2 months, it's not a very long time to then get selected into the team and then try and have to prepare everything to run in March. It's a very tight window, but in order to do really well and then organising is to organise well in advance. Even possibly a year in advance is what I was probably starting to think about the event. What I'm going to do, what training was I going to do. Certain just ideas popped into my head, how I'm going to race, what was I going to do, and sort of have adaptation, just being able to adapt to a lot of the environment and just different courses and stuff. So, but yeah, the physical side was more just, try with the course that I ran at in Aarhus, it was tough, but I was pretty well prepared for that, and I used to run up hills a lot of the time, as it was quite hilly, and even like downhill running. It was quite undulating. Doing even on easy runs, I'd run easy on the flat and then try and push up a hill, just like it was in the race in Aarhus, and that was sort of what I wanted to do, and then the psychological side, it was different because I knew the course and the actual event was obviously going to be very hard, and it's very difficult to, every cross-country race is different, and with Aarhus it was especially different because it was a world-class field, some of the best runners ever run in the world, watching, it was a bit, and expectations as well coming into it, so being able to just stay focused on what I was doing, being able to concentrate, not getting ahead of myself during even the race or even beforehand, just going with the flow was probably the best, best thing I could have done, because it allowed me to think better, make better decisions, and it just allowed me to race the way I wanted to race. So, yeah.
Thanks, Anne. Worked out well for you in the end.
It did, surprised me.
Bree, how do you manage as a personal coach with a squad of 40 athletes, mind you, splitting your time between the needs of those athletes who are staying home, going for the next season, and those athletes who are heading overseas to compete with major world champs? So for Bree coaches, along with Karen, Alex Hulley, so Alex is going all around the world, competing in major competitions and needs to be right on the day, but you also got a huge squad.
Yep.
How do you manage that, and what's your coaching setup?
So we've sort of had to work that out over time. We've been going overseas every year since 2012 with someone on a team. I'm pretty lucky I coach with someone else. Excuse me, so we sort of made it, one of us try to go to each major championships, but sometimes we both want to be there. So the first year we went away, it was a disaster. We came home to crying athletes because other coaches had told them they should be doing this, should have been doing that. So we learned pretty quickly we had to put something in place, which we thought we had, but it didn't quite work. So 2016, Alex had World Juniors, and we also had 2 athletes going to the Paralympics. And I didn't want to miss Alex at World Juniors, Kaz didn't want to miss Guy and Nicola. So we went with Alex to Poland, and I took Guy and Nicole with me. So we travelled, did some comps over in Europe, so then I could still be there for Alex, and then Kaz came. I was the team coach for the Paralympics, and Kaz came over for the competition. But I think the biggest part is making sure all our athletes are independent. So we have done a lot of work with Alex on her going overseas on her own, so we don't need to be there every time she competes, because obviously it's getting more and more and more, and we can't do it. But we've got one of our senior athletes who we've sort of set up now as our assistant coach. She coaches a lot of our junior kids, and she has everything in place for when we go away. So we write all the programs in advance, leave it so they know exactly what they need to do. And I guess the joy of social media and stuff is if they get into trouble, they can send us videos. They'll be on Facebook or something in the morning when we wake up, so that we can comment and that. But we also know that Ty sort of has, you get to training at this time, they stay in routine, they know what's expected, she'll unlock the gym, she'll give you the equipment, she'll watch you throw and feed back to us, and then we sort of know that when we come back they've done everything they'd be doing if we weren't there.
Sounds like a good system. So to all of you, what are some of your highlights from your international trips and competitions? Sam?
There's a few things that just stand out. Obviously, just the experience of going over to another country. As it was my first time out of Australia, a lot of it was like straight over my head. you know, even getting through international terminals and stuff, it was just so stressful, and have to always have passports and stuff like in hand, and it was like I'd always put it away, and then all of a sudden I'd come up to another thing where I'd have to take it out again out of my bag, and it was just repeat cycle, and just after a while I just got so stressed out over it. But once I was just comfortable, and once I had you know, saw a lot of the rest of the team, it was a good experience.
You enjoyed being part of the actual team then?
Yeah, because I mean, for cross country, we take, I think it's about 6 athletes per category, and so it's obviously the juniors and then seniors. So there's about 24, 23 of us all up, which is a good size. It's not too big where you sort of feel like it's, you know, like, how do I explain? So it's better to be in a smaller group because you feel more connected in a way, and it was also better because they were all wanting the same, they were all at the same place and all doing the same thing, so it was easy to get along with your teammates. And I've also had a good experience with other you know, people from different countries, especially the Ethiopians. They were actually really like, they were just awesome, just to see them, what they do, like just in the hotel rooms and stuff. You know, they take like the whole loaf of bread. You know, we get there and then another loaf of bread's gone. It was pretty funny, but yeah, no, it was a good time. So, and especially because we had Chicola getting it, who's obviously got his citizenship. That was also my person. Like, I thought that was, you know, I was so happy to see him, you know, get through into the Australian team, because he did miss out on the opportunity to represent our country before, and seeing him there, you know, it was just like, yeah, I was just happy for it, you know. And they had like a whole feature on him and stuff about it, so it was amazing for him to actually, you know, him to be there, and he absolutely loved it. And you know, I'm really good mates with him, and that was, you know, great takeaway. It's just really good friends, and have come out of this experience.
Certainly one of my great experiences is all the friends that you make over the years. What do you think, Mark?
For sure, yeah, that's the key. Yeah, I mean, you do know people from Australia, but all over the world, and all that sort of thing, so that is one of the most important things about it. But yes, there's been, I mean, good things, plenty of bad things. It doesn't work out, but yeah, asking about highlights?
What are your highlights, your favourite experiences, memorable ones that have stuck out over the many years?
Well, I think the fact about that many things don't work out, and when they do work out, because it actually is more often that they don't work out than they do work out. Unfortunately, that's the case, because we work very hard to make a national team, and you know, and then that's great excitement. But then it's a whole new, different experience, you know, to try and go overseas, and usually it doesn't work out. Especially we're not used to it. Coaches are not used to it. The athletes are not used to it. You're competing. You know, when you're preparing in Australia, the weather's getting better as you get in towards summer. When you're preparing to go overseas, the weather's getting worse, especially in Melbourne, Tasmania, that sort of thing. That's difficult. Highlights, I think, probably, because I mean, you coached Steve Hooker, and he's obviously got some big highlights there. But the thing was, he was selected for a number of teams beforehand that never worked. 2001 World Student Games, he got injured, didn't even go. 2003 didn't jump terrible. 2004 didn't make the final at the Olympics. 2005 was probably the biggest highlight, because it was when he competed for the first, even though he's had very good heights in Australia, he never actually reproduced it overseas. And a meet in Sweden where he came second at equivalent like of a Diamond League meet these days. And that, I think, is because all of a sudden we thought we're in the business, we're in the main game with all the big stars. And that really was a big breakthrough. And then other things came later, but that was really, I think...
How old was Steve in his first international competition?
Well, he was only very young. He went to the World Juniors in 2000, and he was 18, and he only just barely made that team. And he probably, had he not made that team, would never do athletics. He was playing football at that time, and his younger brother got drafted by Collingwood, And I remember his brother didn't have a car. He didn't have his licence, but he came because he got drafted by Collingwood. He went and bought a car, and he couldn't drive it because he didn't have a licence. And Steve was playing football as well, obviously very talented. And all of a sudden, when he got picked for the World Juniors, he says, "I want to be an Olympic pole vaulter. I'm not going to play football anymore." But had he not, I'm sure he would have played football, whatever standard. So yeah, he was only very young, but it took a long while to get anywhere, and many years of things not working, so, yeah.
Ray, how about you? What have been some of your memorable experiences?
Probably some of the places that you get to see and go to that I would never, ever have dreamed of going to. Obviously with Alex there's been a lot of highlights. She's a pleasure because she always manages to pull it out when it matters, but from a coaching perspective, probably World Juniors, she was in an awful space leading into that. Like, we just could not get her to throw anywhere, and we were secretly so stressed, but you can't let her see that. Like, she'd thrown an Australian record 3 weeks before we left, and then all of a sudden couldn't throw within 10 metres of that. And we're like, oh my God, and we managed to get her up to get silver at that competition. So probably from a coaching point of view, she got selected for the Continental Cup in 2000 and, I don't know, the last one, must have been 14. And we got a phone call just before to say they brought in a new international rule and you had to be 18 to compete at international competitions. And Alex wasn't 18. So Yvonne Mullins rang me and said, because I was going as well as a team coach, and she said, the other 3 throwers in the team are Valerie Adams, Danny Samuels and Kim Mickle. So we want to pay for Alex and you to go anyway, because who better are you going to learn from than those 3 girls? So that was an amazing experience. Alex got to train with the world record holder. Just seeing those elite athletes, I think, was a real turning point for her as well, to then compete at the next one 4 years later. But I think the highlights come differently for different people. Obviously the highlights in her world are records and medals and things like that. But we have another boy, Costa, who before World Youth came up to Kaz and I and said, "I'm going to make this team." And we looked at the standard and it was 10 metres further than he'd ever thrown, and he had 8 months. And we're like, yeah, cool, yep, no worries, we can do that. And we're thinking, oh my God, you're kidding yourself. But once he set himself to it, he made that team, came back World Juniors, did exactly the same to us. I'm going to make that team. And I think we had 7 metres to go in that 7 months, and he managed to get up. So that was a really big highlight. And probably for me, the Paralympics was the other, being in the village, being in that sort of team environment. We had 2 very different athletes, one who was expected to medal and came 4th by 3 centimetres. He'd medalled at 4 world champs and fell short by a few centimetres in that comp, but our other girl was not expected to make the final. She threw a PB, made the final, and that was probably our highlights of coaching. Maybe not for Kaz, because she booked to go home straight after and she made the final, so it was a very mad rush. But other than that, I think, yeah, the places you go and just seeing them all perform and meet their own goals along the way, which is pretty different for different athletes.
So there seems to be a little bit of a trend coming, particularly from you two who've been on many trips. There are a lot of negative things that happen on the trips as well, but they can often lead to positive things in the future if you hang in there. So can you talk about a trip perhaps that didn't go quite so well as you planned, and what you learned perhaps as coaches from those, Mark?
I looked at some numbers, and I've been personal coach of athletes who've been selected for 26 different international teams over the last 20 odd years. Now, of those 26, 2 didn't even get to go away. All right. So, and then of those, I went through in 17. I would say underachieved, or didn't get a result, or no heighted, or something or other. So I'm saying only 9 of them probably did what I wanted, and of that, only 2 PBs on that tour, but necessarily at the championship. Now, you might, perhaps don't know what I'm doing, perhaps I don't know. I don't think that's that different, to be quite honest. I think if you can reproduce the standard that has put you onto a team, because the standards are set so that you will be competitive if you get there, then you will do well at the championship. But doing that is very, very, very difficult, I have found, personally, as I said. And I think that's pretty universal. It's just because it is so difficult. Now, in terms of things that didn't go well, I mean, there's so many things that didn't go well. I could talk about poles. I mean, that's a never-ending problem, where you end up, the poles, you can't get the poles on the plane. You have to. So I remember we were going. It was a World Student Games, and I had 3 pole vaulters. I was the team coach. Poles didn't get on the plane. Okay, so the athletes went off without the poles. I stayed. It was in Queensland. I had to stay for like 2 days and I just walked around the air terminals, walking around saying, which of you airlines will take me and my 3 pole bags to Europe? And eventually I did a deal, but it took forever. We had to get to Milan, and I couldn't get to Milan. And they could only fly me to Rome. I show up there by myself, have to rent a car, try and get 3 pole bags on the roof. I've got like 6 hours to drive from Milan after flying from Australia from Rome to Milan, and then the next morning we had to drive off to Slovenia or somewhere. You know, I mean, and this is a never-ending. Now, if you don't have your poles, so what actually usually we do now, if you're flying within Europe, because the planes are small, often the poles don't get on the planes and you've got more problems.
Well, Emma George, former athlete of Mark's as well, former world record holder in the pole vault, she did tell me once that the pole was too small for the plane, so they decided that they'd break it in half.
It's just never ending. So now what happens, once we get to Europe, hopefully we get the poles to Europe, we don't put them on a plane again. So we just drive everywhere. I've driven, I reckon there was a couple of years I drove more on the other side of the road than I did on this side of the road, because I drove so, everywhere, because you just can't risk it, losing your poles just before a major championship. So there's many things like that. Fortunately, as I said, I reckon we've pretty well always got the poles to the championship, and that's the biggest relief of my life, is when I see the poles come out onto the track for the thing, because even sometimes they don't even, you've got them to the stadium and they lose them there.
Youth Olympics, they got stuck in bomb control for 2 weeks in the village because they didn't have time.
Yeah, this is the sort of thing. So you see them come out and the athletes there, and you think that's the big part of your job as a pole vault coach, is getting poles and athletes there. Yeah. But anyway, look, there's many things. I mean, I've been with athletes who've no-heighted, and then sitting next to them on a plane flying back from Europe after they've no-heighted is very much not fun, I can tell you. And that sort of thing. So I'm sure the others will think of things that didn't go so well.
Give us some of your lessons that you learned.
I guess for throwers, it's warm-up and training and having to be flexible. When I first started coaching, I was this is what works and this is how we're going to do it and this is how it has to be done. And I very quickly learned when we're going overseas that it doesn't work that way. And there may be no gym for a week because they forgot to ask for a gym access, or the gym doesn't have any of the equipment that you're used to having, so you have to sort of think on the run. Youth Olympics in China, we trained pretty much in that queue that Mark showed with your hammer gets 2-hour time slot or an hour and a half time slot, and that's when you train regardless of what time you wanted to train. Bad luck, you train between 2 and 4 if it's boiling. Bad luck, you wait in the line. For me, being a female coach with all the European male coaches isn't always that pleasant, because they'll yell and scream and try and push in and don't understand a word they're saying. But this particular warm-up track, we trained there every day leading into the competition, rocked up the morning of the competition to warm up, and they pulled the cage down. And Alex was pretty good in being flexible. The girl that was expected to win just chucked a massive tantrum, threw things all over the place, and that was her comp done. I don't even think she medalled. That Paralympics was the same. Sorry, if you do discus, you can't warm up. There's no room. Oregon was pretty much, the track was here, and the physio tents are about 1 metre to the side. I'm like, if you foul, it's going into those tents, so let's just not. So, I guess that was a huge learning curve for me, is having to try and be flexible and having to realise that, and sort of the accreditation thing as well. At Commonwealth Games, we didn't have accreditation, so we needed to make sure we could go to all the training, but not the warm-up. So again, we need to make sure that Alex was independent enough that we could trust that she'd go and do it, and we had no control. So being a control freak, it's a little bit hard to sort of let go, but it's definitely probably the biggest learning, and making sure the athletes are all right with that as well, making sure they don't get into it. Headspace where this is how it has to be done, because it's probably not going to be possible.
Thanks. And you like to be in control as well around your surroundings. Did you struggle with that at all when you were away?
Not really. I mean, it was pretty easy to keep a level head and just focus on what I was trying to achieve, or So.
Any lessons that you learned or things that you might do differently for next time?
Well, it's kind of hard because like it's only my first international competition. I think if I had more under my belt, I'd be able to say which I learned from it. But really, I was so like overwhelmed and like really thrived off the experience that it's sort of I can't really pinpoint anything where I can sort of say, oh, this was good or bad. It was just all an experience. It's all taking everything in perspective.
And such a successful one.
Yeah.
That's remarkable. First trip to do so well on
Yeah.
the first trip. I can tell you from seeing so many people and just being overwhelmed and it goes south, not north. That sort of thing.
Yeah, so no, I was happy with how like just the race went and just the planning that went into it as well. I even with that adapting to things and stuff. But that was probably the only challenge was that I'd run with a backpack full of stuff with at about 2.5k away from the nearest track, and so I'd run 2.5k with a bag on, and then I'd have to do my session, which I just made up on the spot, which I do all the time now before a major comp, and then went back. So it was sort of hard to like get travel and stuff. So I just ran or walked everywhere. So yeah, that was probably the only thing that was difficult out of it, But and just trying to find my way. But after a while, once I got down to the track, it was sort of easy enough to come back. I sort of remember, oh yeah, there was this soccer field or this building or whatever to remember. So, but no, it was all good fun, and it's got to see things that wouldn't usually see.
But it sounds like flexibility is definitely a key. It's coming across.
Oh yeah.
So, what attributes do you recognise in athletes who compete at the highest level, or who you've worked with alongside, or worked with Sam? What attributes do you recognise in those that are kind of common traits that you're seeing again and again? Bree, you've been on a number of teams. What are you seeing for those who are successful?
I think from the beginning with my guys that were going to be successful, they would do whatever you asked or suggested straight away. Like, we have two very different groups of athletes. We have one group who are far more successful, and I think with them straight away, like if you suggested you've got a niggle, go and see a physio, or you need to train this many days, or we need to get you into the gym now, it was done. Like, that was it. There was no questions asked. They were ready to do whatever it was you asked of them. And
So they're very coachable then.
very coachable. Like, we have a squad monitoring. The ones that do well are the ones that do it every week. Like, Alex, every single morning the phone will beep and hers is done. So we know exactly how much she slept, how she's feeling, what she's eaten, when she's injured, when she's feeling sick, and we can sort of work around that. So they're definitely very coachable. I think in the team environment, they go quite, Alex is a little bit different, but the rest of them are quite willing to sort of work within that team environment. Alex is a little bit more fussy. Like, food was obviously a big issue, and getting around that. But again, I think the attribute is that they're willing to learn and to deal with that and not throw in the towel when things get too hard, or when things don't go to plan. When you have that tour and you come home and that was a disaster, like, a lot of them will say, I'm done. And like, we've had those athletes that have come home and said, I hated it, I don't ever want to do that again. We had a girl that went to World Juniors, it wasn't that successful, and she's like, I never ever want to go on a team again, like, I don't want to. And she never really trained properly. She broke the Australian record in shot put that year, I think that all schools, and I think that's the last time she ever threw. And she was just like, no, I hated it, I don't want to do it. So I think, that being flexible, being patient, being willing to, it didn't go to plan, but let's put this into place for next time, and they end up being the ones that come out the other end.
Mark, similar?
Well, it's not necessarily the big star athlete that I would always think about, because they're the ones that everyone knows about, who's done really well. But you see, I think of the people who've overachieved relative to their physical ability. And that is, they've done better than, or at least as well as they possibly could. And I can think of a couple of athletes that I've coached over the years, probably two stand out, who did much better than what they physically should have. And the thing that was common with them, I'll mention them, Joel Pocklington, who won and came fifth in the Commonwealth Games in 2014, and Rosie Ditton, who you may remember, who was in Rosie, yeah, right. So she's won a number of Australian titles, but very limited physically. Lovely girl and that sort of stuff, but they just were so determined to do well, no matter what. you know, they would do every single thing that they... I mean, I remember Rosie, she was probably in her late 20s. What can I do to make this better? All right, so what I will do, we've got all the training worked out, and I'm going to... So you can do an extra lifting session. Okay, so she joins a gym across the road from where she works, and so she did that 3 mornings a week throughout the winter, in addition to all the other sessions, while working a full-time job, and, you know, that sort of thing. She was... and all that sort of thing. Joel as well. He just is so filthy if he doesn't win or doesn't jump as well. I mean, he's just determined to do well and do everything in the lead up. At the moment, he still bothers. I don't know why he bothers half the time, because he's got children and all this sort of stuff. He hasn't got, and he still comes out and competes. And obviously, he doesn't jump very high because he hasn't got time to train. And then he's still filthy about it. And I just say, there is a logical inconsistency in what you are doing. You should not be upset, because you get out what you put in, and he's in his early 30s or now, and it's just not going to work. But yeah, it is a determination to do well, and this is what I'm going to do. Now, it doesn't make sense for everyone to do that. You know, and there's other things in your life that and we know virtually nobody's going to make any money out of it. I mean, someone will, but not many. And there's other things, you know, your study and family and a whole range of different things. But if you are determined to do really, really well, I want to achieve better than what I physically can, then that's the key. And that's the thing that, you know, earns so much respect from the coaches and the community and all that sort of thing, not necessarily the person that's got the physical ability to be really, really good. There are people with physical ability to be really, really good, and of course they don't achieve because they don't have that determination to make sure that they're going to do well.
Sam, you were running alongside some of the best athletes in the world, but also within the Australian team, you know, the best in Australia in distance running. So were there traits, attributes that you noticed with these athletes?
A lot of the athletes were pretty well independent. There was a matter, especially for me, a lot of it, we were all very based on our own training. We were all very focused on our own training leading into those championships, which I think was, for me, was probably the best thing I could have done, because a lot of people, especially even at like a national level or a state level, it's very easy to get caught up into things and wanting to do like a warm-up or a certain run or do certain training with other people, and it sort of keeps... I suppose it keeps you engaged, but like it's almost, you've got to stick to your own routines, because obviously if you do something different, you know, a week out before a championship or a couple of days out, it's, you know, you're not going to get the rewards for it later on. So being able to stay, staying independent with, you know, when I mean independent, I mean like we do our own sort of sessions, and I train on different days to the rest of the team. So like everyone would be, you know, training either Tuesday or Thursday for their main sessions. I'd have only Wednesday, and which was better for me because then I could recover for the Thursday, and then Friday have a complete rest, and Saturday. But I just think everyone was pretty well independent in what they wanted to do and what they wanted to achieve. And it was quite competitive as well. You know, we wanted to really wanted to run well, and yeah, so that was
So Sam, you've now qualified for the 3K and for the 5K for World Juniors, your first World Juniors.
Yep.
I'm not going to say this has come out of the blue, because I've watched you steadily progress over the years, and I know that progression is just all part of what's happening with you now. So, but do you feel any pressure about your continued development, or are you excited about the future, and what are your goals for the next year or so?
Well, look, I don't think there's any pressure in trying to improve. I don't feel any pressure to improve. It just happens naturally. It's almost, I pick out things, even when I have really good performances, I don't pick out, I obviously initially pick out the good things. Oh yeah, I ran this and that, and ran the race the way I wanted to, but then there was also things later on that I thought, I could have done this better, or I wish the pace was on a little bit more so I could push it on, X amount of laps to go, or, there's always room for improvement, and you can't be pressured to do that. It's on yourself and what you want to achieve. For me, I want to run World Juniors and be able to represent my country proudly, and I'll take the steps to do that. And even if it means I have to run some incredible time, there is room for that, and there's definitely time for that. I guess, yeah, just time for improving all the time, and you can't be too ignorant of it. Like, you can't almost ignore the fact that you can't say that, oh, there's absolutely perfect comp, because nothing goes, perfect.
I think we've heard that today.
As we have mentioned before, but just being able to pick little things out, I think, is the key to relieve that pressure, because yes, like I said, it's all on you and what you want to do and what you want to achieve, and being able to take the appropriate steps to achieving that.
Well, we do wish you all luck this year, Sam. It's a big year for you and a really exciting year.
Nice, thank you.
At this stage, I might throw it over to all of you. I'm sure there are a couple of questions out there for our panel.
Don't be scared.
If there's nothing, I've got something. So you've sort of talked about international travel in this context, I guess. Is there anything that is between sort of a national competition and an international one where you can kind of, maybe New Zealand or somewhere nearby, that you can kind of go to and sort of feel that unplanned routine, in somewhere foreign, yet not have the pressure and expectation?
Cairns. Well, I mean, we get plenty of it in this country. It's a big country, but there are. I mean, travelling without moving big time zones is helpful. Like, if you can go, like they're talking about meet next year in Japan, that sort of thing. And there are good comps early in the season in
So
Japan.
they have special eligibility, I guess, is almost the barrier that we're talking about. And obviously you want to be sort of at least to a certain standard. I mean, you don't want to go there and throw, pathetic mounts.
Well,
You want to give
you
it.
probably have to talk to Brian or someone. He'll organise something to go to Japan.
Yeah, I was just sort of like something of a
Yeah,
fleeting
and there are
settle,
meets in New Zealand and all that sort of thing.
The Oceania and Melanesian games, a lot of our guys have gone to that because it is always in a random country, especially for throwing, where they might not, they didn't even have hammers one year. It's sort of, you're in the team environment, but you're sort of the best there is. Like, you're not going out against people that are going to necessarily annihilate you like you may at a World Juniors or a World Youth, but you're sort of getting the away from home, you're in the team, the foreign food. We went to Cook Islands. I went to Samoa recently for Pacific Games, which was an Olympic committee sort of run thing. Like, it was, we couldn't eat in the food hall. He'd probably hate me for telling you this, but Steve Solomon had McDonald's for dinner 3 nights because there was nothing else to eat. Like, you were either going to get food poisoning or eat McDonald's. Like, there wasn't really. We slept on, I think there was 40 people in a room. Like, they just got a big hall, put a divider down the middle. This was girls, this was boys, and that was your bunks.
So you talk about the experience of it, and this is what I mean. I mean, there's no pressure to win or anything like that. It's the experience of learning that.
Yeah, that was a bit of a point score, but just being totally out of your comfort zone. Even we used to take our squad up to the Gold Coast for the Summer Down Under meet against the Americans, just because your parents aren't coming, you're in a team, the team being our squad, but you have to look after yourself, you have to feed yourself. You're going to go out there with people you're not used to competing against, and that was sort of another sort of lead-in thing we kind of did. But we send even our better athletes, we send them to other states to train with other coaches for a little while. Look after yourselves, work out your own training, come back, and all of that being with people you're not familiar with, training with them is
because being out of your comfort zone is really way of actually pushing that barrier a bit further.
And it's easier for some people than others, I think. Being away from home can be so, especially if you have those sort of kids, send them for a few days and then bring them back. Because the one I spoke about before, she just couldn't cope with being away from home for 4 weeks. She went from being at a camp for 2 days to you're going to Europe for 4 weeks on your own, and
it's a big jump,
it's a big change, especially when you're young.